This is North Korea, one of the most isolated and authoritarian nations on earth. Since its inception in the aftermath of World War II, the country has been under the rule of the Kim family. It has been ruled by the Kim family since its inception after World War II. Country's governance system, based on Juche Bhamadarsa, emphasizes self-reliance and loyalty to the leader, the foundation of which was created by Kim Il-sung, which became stronger under his son Kim Jong-il. And now the heir of that family, Kim Jong-un, is ruling. Maybe any different opinion is not tolerated here. And Supreme Leader has absolute power. Despite food shortages, harsh punishments for dissent, and reports of widespread human rights abuses from defectors, the regime appears unlikely to change. The West has long hoped that North Korea would break away from Chinese and Russian influence and embrace democracy like its southern neighbors. But it never seemed possible. So the question is why there has never been a change in regime, no successful coup d'etat or military coup. When was the last time you heard of an attempted coup against the Kim family's absolute power? The Kim family has ruled the country for over 70 years. This period, however, also saw a series of famines, economic crises, and leadership failures. Now you can ask why there was no successful rebellion or coup despite the suffering of the citizens. Modadags answer this. Requires a political system that encourages loyalty to the leader more than any other system. Also important is when and how a military coup takes place. In a typical coup d'etat, the army or a part of the army marches on the capital or other important government building and demands the resignation of the leaders or seizes power by force. These are usually led by disaffected generals. Those who have the support of members of the government or even foreign governments, and depending on the context, may have the support of ordinary people. For example, in successful coups in Mali in 2020 or in Burkina Faso in 2022, the military arrested the president at the behest of high-ranking military commanders. Even citizens who were disgruntled by the policy failures of that government also gave moral support. So why does this formula not work in North Korea? First, the Kim family has brutally removed the country's political elite, particularly in recent decades, to avoid coups. The risk of a coup becomes very real whenever the political class and military leaders collectively feel that they are being undermined or that the supreme leader needs to be replaced. But if these sections of the North Korean elite are killed or imprisoned on a regular basis, the problem is largely solved. For example, in February 2023, when North Korea was celebrating the 75th anniversary of the establishment of the Korean People's Army, it held its usual intercontinental missile display at the military base in Kuchkao. Of course, military and political dignitaries are present there. But this year, some key members of the country's political bureau, the highest political cabinet of the communist regime, were absent from the parade. But they were supposed to be there. That's because in the weeks before Kuchkaoze, Kim Jong is said to have replaced 5 of the 12 party secretariat officials and 7 of the 17-member political board. Earlier, when Kim Jong-un came to power, he was very young and inexperienced. His early years were particularly dangerous, because that's when his authority was most in question. Fears of betrayal and backstabbing from established elites loomed large. So that's exactly what his father did to consolidate power. He replaced about 80% of the members of the political bureau shortly before his death in 2010, so that his son can take over without challenge. At the party congress a few months after taking power, Kim Jong replaced at least 42% more members of the political board and another 13% in 2023. Earlier in 2012, Vice Minister of the Army, Kim Chol, was sentenced to death for drinking and raving during official mourning after the death of Kim Jong-il. North Korean Army Chief Ri Yong-ho, who even helped train Kim Jong-un to take over from his father, was reportedly executed for disagreeing on economic policy. 2017, Kim Jong-un's half-brother Kim Jong-nam, who was once considered the heir to the Kim family, was also allegedly killed by Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-nam was in exile in China for advocating political reform. He was killed in February 2017 by the application of a nerve agent at the Kuala Lumpur airport. Even his highly influential uncle, Jang Song-taek, who was Kim's literal guardian, was executed in December 2013. Jang, 67, is accused of trying to usurp his nephew. But many analysts believe this could be another precautionary move by the new young leader. These are just a few of the many examples of purges carried out in North Korea. Not only does it eliminate those who oppose the country's supreme leader's policies, but it also removes any thorn in the Kim family's path to staying in power. They also remove the fear of any possible coup. The brutality of these purges is crucial to the Kim family's continued security and power. But that doesn't mean people never try to get rid of them. In fact, there have been several times when North Korean coup plotters have come very close to usurping the Kim family. The most famous of these occurred in the early post-war period. He faced the strongest opposition and pressure from pro-Chinese and pro-Soviet factions within the country. One of them was the Soviet Koreans. Born or raised in Russia, returned to Korea after the war, many of whom fought in the Red Army like Kim Il-sung. In the early years of Pyongyang's post-World War II development, the North Korean Communist Party was closely aligned with the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, another key group in this coup attempt was the Yun clan. They were pro-Chinese communists and were made up of Korean exiles who joined the Chinese Communist Party CCP. Many of them fought in the Chinese army. That's why they were more loyal to Mao Zedong. However, most of them eventually joined the Workers' Party of North Korea. But in the mid-1950s, these important groups of Koreans in the political system had closer ties to the political culture and, more importantly, to the military of neighboring countries than to their own country. Kim knew he had to eliminate these factions to consolidate power, but unfortunately at the same time de-Stalinization was going on in the Soviet Union. In other words, the then Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev was trying to bring out the Soviet politics from Stalin's authoritarian regime. In June 1956, Khrushchev summoned Kim to Moscow for 6 weeks. In simple words, he asked him to come on the way. It was then that the leaders of the Soviet and Chinese factions met and devised a plan to attack Kim upon his return to the country. But Kim's loyalists, many of whom were indirectly involved in the plot, eventually backed down, go against the opposition. Apart from fear of punishment, a major reason for this was that Kim's opposition groups were seen as outsiders and foreign agents, where Kim was seen as a true Korean. And to most party members, a ruthless Korean leader was better than one loyal to China or Russia. You might have guessed what happened next. A more clean operation was carried out. Many members of both groups fled to China and the Soviet Union to escape the purges. However, China and the Soviet Union advised Kim not to launch a purge, but he didn't listen. By 1959, more than 25% of the members of the Constituent Assembly had been removed. By the late 1960s, every member of both groups had been expelled or executed. In the 1990s, there was another coup attempt in North Korea. This coup attempt is not too surprising in 1994, so close to Kim Il-sung's death, because at that time the people of North Korea were facing extreme food shortage and famine. This led to riots and strikes and even beatings of food distribution officials. It is estimated that over 1 million people in the country died in that famine. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, North Korea lost its largest trading partner. Another ally of North Korea, China, was not enough to handle that situation, due to which the situation was gradually going out of control. In such a situation, a public uprising was only waiting for time. Even protest movements had started in different regions by that time. It was at this time that part of the North Korean People's Army and the 7th Corps, headquartered in Hamhue, made their own coup plans. More than 30 high-ranking officials of the reformists decided to stage a revolt just as the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) was visiting the country. They wanted to let the international community know they needed support, but this time the Kim family won. All the members of the conspirators were arrested before the IAEA arrived there. As the United States pressured North Korea to allow the IAEA to conduct investigations into its secret nuclear facilities, North Korea felt that the IAEA was violating its sovereignty and was actually acting as a proxy for the United States. As a result, North Korea withdrew from the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty the following year in 1994. This prevented the agency, which it viewed as a US puppet, from inspecting North Korea's nuclear program. Meanwhile, another military unit in Sinuiju staged a small-scale mutiny in 1993 when a plot against the IAEA was thwarted. But they too were defeated, and later the rebels were executed. In the meantime, there was no sign of abating the riots among the workers in various places due to the effects of famine. On the other hand, around 1995, 10 military officers were sentenced to death for plotting to kill Kim Jong-un. However, it is difficult to confirm whether this information is accurate, because there are conflicting reports and the Kim family has always denied any such incident. The 6th Army Corps. Coup attempt at Chongjin is perhaps the most significant of these times of extreme instability in North Korea. This coup attempt is believed to have taken place in 1995. Pyongyang's decision not to send food to provinces such as Hamhung during famines was frowned upon by high-ranking officers of the 6th Army. They planned to capture Chongjin's communications center, the port, some missile launchers, and the university. They would then call for the 7th Corps to join them on the coast of Hamhung, and together they would march towards Pyongyang to arrest political insiders and rule the country. Thar will take control. But the most important of this plan was to control the missile installations in the region. because they could use that advantage to claim control of the missile installations. But again, the State Security Department knew about this conspiracy in advance. The Chongjing establishment was raided and arrested before the coup began. Some reports say that Kim Yong-chun, head of the 6th Corps, himself went to the State Security Department and leaked information against his own corps. There are also stories that Korean soldiers trained at the Soviet Union's military academy returned to North Korea after the death of Supreme Leader Kim Il-sung and were later involved in several coup attempts. Between 30 and 40 of these military officers are alleged to have been involved in a plot to assassinate Kim by turning their tanks into the jungle during a military coup in 1992. And some believe they may have also been involved in the 6th coup attempt, although this has not been confirmed. Some experts believe that Shastakor's coup could not have been successful because King Jong-il had already planned to remove them, because much of what was a profitable trade on the Chinese frontier was going into their hands. But due to the famine that was going on at that time, many common soldiers died of starvation. Because of that, out of desperation, a situation of rebellion probably arose. But the coup plotters were not on their side. They were arrested before the coup. About 400 officers were executed in this incident, imprisoned or disappeared. That is, a major unit of their army was completely eliminated during the country's most extreme economic and political crisis. But whatever happens, it all goes to show how unlikely a coup in North Korea is to succeed. Because the Kim family and the ruling elite have already managed to do so whenever a coup plot has come up. And of course, the purges that have followed have killed or eliminated all opposition forces, which has subsequently created a situation where no successful coup is possible because all opposition forces are either already dead or imprisoned in labor camps at the same time as these high-ranking officials who want to stage a coup. It cannot be said that the number was too high, because the top political and military officials are so used to a lot of cash and a luxurious lifestyle that they have no desire to change their status. These followers who rose from the ranks of the commoners owe everything to Kim and know very well that if Kim falls, so will theirs. This made them more loyal to the Qing family and unwilling to join any coup attempts. Meanwhile, ordinary soldiers and officers are rarely deployed in their hometowns. Instead, they are sent to remote areas. In this way, the risk of coups is greatly reduced by blocking close contact with colleagues at their workplace. Although this authoritarian rule and suppression of opposition is always seen in a Nayakatantra, but the Kim family's hold on power for so long in the modern era is quite global and unique. It is rare in history for a country to be ruled by a family for such a long period of time with extreme authority. Now, you can ask the Western powers are not interfering here. Broadly speaking, there is no shortage of examples of US complicity in the overthrow of other countries' governments, especially when they don't listen to the US. Why is the United States not removing the Qing family by itself or a combined coalition through NATO or a coup d'etat? Especially when they are so adept at overthrowing governments through coups. The main reason no foreign power has succeeded in regime change in North Korea is that they are actually more powerful than you think. The first problem is that there is little chance of rebellion from ordinary citizens, because there is 3-generation rule or 3-generation punishment rules, where only one person is sent to jail for treason. Rather, 3 generations of his family were also sent. So a failed attempt at rebellion there meant a curse on his family. Meanwhile, the second problem with foreign powers attempting to aid a coup or insurgency is that the general tactics of the CIA do not apply to North Korea. Washington's strategy of destabilizing the country by fueling protests, by supporting political opposition groups, and funding organizations such as pro-democracy NGOs is impossible in North Korea, because the country is very isolated. To say that such organizations have no way to enter the country, the United States was able to incite revolutions in post-Soviet states such as Armenia, Georgia, or Ukraine. Because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, freedom of information played a major role in those countries. There is no opportunity for North Korea to sow the seeds of a political revolution through the US government's democracy assistance programs. Because even in this age of information, this country is isolated, so to speak, and that says a lot. North Korea's border is virtually flawless. The idea that any pro-democracy group could enter and exert any influence is unrealistic, especially considering how tight Kim Jong-un's control of the country is right now. We've seen before how quickly he takes action when any South Korean media enters the country. Apart from the isolation aspect, North Korea is actually a very dangerous military power. Of course, you know about their nuclear weapons. You might say that is a bit of an exaggeration, but it is nevertheless one of the most important barriers to international relations. Kim Jong-un's regime saw a 10-fold increase in missile launches compared to his father's. Kim, the youngest leader, knows where his advantage lies. So if the North Korean regime finds out that there is some kind of Western plot to put Kim Jong-un in power, and if they think that this is a threat to the survival of the Kim family and the existence of that country, then who is to stop them from launching a nuclear bomb at Seoul, or even Washington DC if they think the US is behind it? Outside, however, not only nuclear weapons, North Korea has one of the largest artillery forces in the world. Their conventional forces are also huge. They have the 4th largest army in the world. There are approximately 1.2 million or 12 lakh soldiers. In addition to one of the world's largest nuclear arsenals, they are also believed to have chemical and biological weapons. And they continue to develop and test ballistic missiles despite UN Security Council sanctions. North Korea is an unpredictable force or dark horse when it comes to playing risk. And for this reason, it is not possible for foreign powers to openly support any coup or attempt to incite revolution. The biggest risk is South Korea, especially Seoul. The number of cannons being fired around Pyongyang and on the Korean border towards Seoul will reduce the city to rubble within hours. And a military operation in North Korea, because of the close relationship between Putin and Kim or the support of the Chinese Communist Party, could be seen as a Western attack against this alliance. This may create new dangers. For now, there is no prospect of the Kim family falling from power in North Korea, although the downfall of this family has been predicted for a long time. However, many analysts believe that Kim's control is showing some signs of weakness recently. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace published a report in 2024. According to their report, North Korea's economic problems have reached new lows because they continue to spend up to 30% of their GDP on defense despite chronic food shortages. The ideological indoctrination and fear instilled in the masses through forced labor camps and the death penalty began to lose some of its luster. Also, the ironclad culture of loyalty is not what it used to be. Uncertainty also surrounds the fourth generation of the Kim family. Kim Jong is said to be training his daughter Kim Joe to be his successor. This can create a major internal problem. Disputes over succession are always a major concern when the time comes. But it is clear that the new geopolitical context is forcing everyone, including the North Koreans, to rethink international politics. In this situation, only time will tell whether the foundation of the Qing family's rule will become stronger or crumble.